The information shared in this episode is not intended to serve as a substitute for mental health services and is only intended to provide education and information to you, the listener. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I have the good fortune of sharing space with Elena Perella, who is a life coach living and working in Sardinia, Italy. In today's episode, we are going to discuss a lot of deep, rich, meaningful, and transformative information as it relates to the human experience. Before getting into the conversation, I would like to share more about Elena. Since childhood, Elena found herself to be very sensitive to other people's suffering. Her natural openness towards people made them feel comfortable in sharing their experiences with her. These experiences awakened an interest in Elena to learn more about human behavior that later became a real passion. At the age of 20, she moved to the Netherlands, where she lived for 14 years. While there, she specialized in the field of human behavior. She received a master's degree in Latin American Studies with a focus on literature and cultural anthropology. Literature helped her to explore the recesses of the human mind, while cultural anthropology helped her to understand the reasons and dynamics that cause members of society to act as they do. Elena worked for various socio-cultural organizations in the Netherlands and obtained a wide range of experience in dealing with people. Working in an international environment reinforced her natural openness to people from diverse backgrounds and beliefs. This exposure helped her to further fine-tune her abilities in order to understand people's emotions and be receptive to them. Elena then moved back to Sardinia, Italy, where she went on to further shape her own business, Sentidu Life Coaching. In creating Sentidu, her life experiences were fundamental because it is from those experiences that she relates to her clients. Elena suffered from a severe depression, an eating disorder, and she was also a victim of domestic abuse. She identifies those events as the manifestations of her family's toxic emotional inheritances that prevented her from being the person who she truly was. By coaching and healing herself, she changed her life. She became stronger and even more inspired to devote her life to supporting people who are ready and eager to learn about themselves. Without further ado, here is Elena Perella. Thank you so much for joining the Honeybee Podcast. Today, I have the good fortune of speaking with Elena Perella, a life coach who has a wonderful company in Sardinia, Italy. Elena, are you here with me?
Yes, I am, Vena. Thank you for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. I am so excited to be speaking with you, Elena. We have been having conversations over the past few weeks. We're both very excited to get into a very meaningful conversation that I know will be positively impactful and transformative for many of the listeners. So, Elena, I am mindful that you have a company in Sardinia, and it is called Sentidu. Can you tell the listeners more about your company and the name Sentidu? What is the meaning behind the name?
Yes, Sentido is a life coaching company. I am the owner of it and the founder of it. Sentido was born many years ago, and the word is a Sardinian word, and it is the capacity of the soul to understand things as they are. This means Sentido.
I absolutely love that name. That is very powerful.
Me
I
too,
love that
yes.
name
Yeah.
because I just know that I know that I know that it's the truth, that the soul does have the capacity to understand things as they are.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
so I am mindful that to me, I think you have an amazing story. You have experienced quite a few things in your life because life has its ebbs and flows. You've experienced quite a few things in life that have been challenging as well as blessed. So just a little bit of what I know about you is earlier in your life, you had experienced severe depression, an eating disorder, and also a victim of domestic abuse. And you connected that to manifestations of your family's toxic emotional inheritance. So I would like for you to speak to what your meaning is, or what does it mean when you say toxic emotional inheritance?
Yes, I went through all that. And when I awoke, it was when I was 19, I began to see reality as it really was. And I began to become aware of everything, of myself, my behavior, of people around me, and saw that that reality was different, that the reality I was made believe by my family, by society. And little by little, I began a process of internal renewal because I had issues that didn't match with my true essence. And these issues, like severe depression and eating disorders, and later the domestic violence, were the manifestations of my family's toxic inheritance, emotional inheritance. This means that I was born with an emotional baggage, and in this baggage that my parents passed on to me, there were their toxic emotions, destructive emotions, inner conflict, destructive tendencies and convictions that compromised the quality of my life. So this is what I mean with this toxic inheritance, emotional inheritance. What I inherited from my parents and family that gave a shape to my reality that wasn't actually a balanced reality. It wasn't my reality because that toxic emotional inheritance was covering the person who I really am.
In knowing that you experienced what many would call trauma, right?
Yes,
In your
right.
life, trauma is something that can be very overwhelming, very heartbreaking, extremely painful, and for many of us, challenging to overpower. So, when you speak about the internal renewal of the soul, I'm curious to know, how did you do that? What energy supported you in doing that? Because again, it's challenging to overpower the after effects of going through many experiences of trauma.
First, I awakened. That marked the turning point in my life. I awakened when I was 19 because of my father's death. And before, I was born traumatized because, as I said, my parents passed on to me their toxic emotional baggage, which means that I inherited not only their inner conflicts, toxic emotions, fears, etc., but they passed on to me also their lack of self-love, teaching me that I wasn't worthy of receiving love. That was the original trauma. And that, plus all that toxic inheritance, compromised the quality of my life until I awakened and I began to work at myself. In the beginning, I wasn't conscious that I was doing process of internal renewal. I just realized that I had many thoughts, feelings, emotions that didn't feel quite good. And by observing them, I recognized that they weren't mine. They were my mother's, my father's. And I began to, how can I say, to sit with them. And little by little, one by one, to replace them with my own emotions, my own feelings, my own convictions by asking myself, okay, if this isn't mine, because I can see that it's my mother's, what is done? My own thoughts. What do I think about this issue? What would I like to feel about this situation? And little by little, step by step, I began to know myself, to develop a sense of self. The force that supported me, the energy that supported me, I think it was the willingness of my soul to break through. Because once you awaken, you can only become aware of yourself little by little. You have no chance to go back. And I didn't want to go back, of course, because I could sense the difference, the positive difference that there was between before my awakening and after the awakening. I didn't know how long it would take to clean myself from all that I had inherited and that wasn't mine. So I think that there was this willingness to make it, to reclaim my place in life, to know who I was, why I behaved that way. And yes, this was that force that guided me throughout my process of internal renewal.
So Elena, in listening to you, I'm present to quite a few things. One of those things I'm thinking about because I've been trained in dialectical behavior therapy, and there are what they call DBT, dialectical behavior therapy assumptions. And one of those assumptions is you may not have caused all of your own problems and you have to solve them anyway. And so when you speak of toxic emotional inheritance or generational strongholds, it makes me think about that particular assumption. You did not create the problems that you inherited, and yet you had to practice having the willingness to sit with those things and heal from those inheritances. So, in your opinion, because so much of what you're saying is resonating with me, and I'm sure resonating with people listening to this episode, is it your opinion, Elena, that many people have the ability or have had the experience of inheriting toxic emotional matters from their parents, their grandparents, and, their various generations?
Yes, I think that we all inherit something from our parents and family. And if they love themselves, if they live in a life of balance, then we don't inherit toxicity. But if they don't love themselves, then we got a problem. Then they will pass on to us that toxicity instead of their love. And I think it's a great majority of us who is dealing with that inside.
So, Elena, you had stated that it is your opinion that many, if not all of us, have inherited emotional toxicity from our parents. And I am of the thought that, yes, I agree 100%. I could see that. I just know that to be true. And I would imagine that many of us do not even realize that we have inherited this emotional toxicity from our parents. And so being born into this energy of trauma, this invisible ongoing pain is challenging, it's heartbreaking. And so one of the things that I was drawn to as I had the pleasure of getting to know more about you and Sentidu in Sardinia is that you have this amazing seminar that you are offering people, and it is called Shake and Reshape Your Life. And I would love for you to share more about this seminar and what folks could expect when they participate.
Yes, with pleasure. In this seminar, I work with people I talk to people and I discuss with them so that we will uncover the connection between past events and present experiences. I help people to understand how we function and why by presenting a new insight on behavior, a new insight on the energetic connection between heart, mind, and body, through which we give shape to our behavior, so that we together can also explore the importance of relearning about love. Because we all talk about love, I think. Many of us are searching for love, but I always wonder, do we really know what love is? So we will talk about love and relearn about it, because I had to relearn about love too. I thought it was something, but actually it was something else, totally different. And I discovered it during my internal renewal. And during this seminar, I will also show people and talk with them about the instruments and strategies that we can use to understand ourselves better and how we can take action to improve ourselves and our lives. Yes, this is what I bring as a message with this seminar.
I'm curious to know, Elena, because I've had this experience of making various transformations in my life after experiencing personal tragedies, personal upsets, things that were totally unexpected and were not planned. And it really shook up my world. And so once that tower or those towers fell and I got into the process of rebuilding, I noticed that there were moments or circumstances that led people out of my life that, when I was rebuilding, the intention was not to lose certain relationships.
Yeah.
In various capacities, mind you. And yet those relationships ended. And in many ways, I'm better for it. And the reason why I'm naming this is because I'm curious to know, through Shake and Reshape Your Life, how, people learning how the past events affect their present and then able to get into this state of improving their lives. In addition to your own awakening and internal work, did you find, and has the people who have participated in your seminar, have they found that certain relationships will naturally end as they cultivate new space of living?
Yes, they have, because what we have inside resonates with what we encounter outside, with our outer world. And depending on what you have, so you will attract that. And even if you do not attract that and you attract something else, you won't recognize it and sabotage it. I'm talking here in case you have toxicity and something beautiful comes into your life, you will sabotage it because of these internal mechanisms, because everything has to match with the frequencies that you are sending. And people who talk with me about this, who participate to the seminars, realize how true is that. And when they go through their own personal internal renewal, they also see people leaving. Sometimes they have to help them a little bit to leave. But then they do it in such a constructive way because they have the right instruments. So often they don't need to create conflict to say goodbye to people. And this is wonderful, because that emptiness is actually a place where new people come in that will resonate more with your new you. So yes, it happens. Yeah.
So I am curious to know, and I love to ask the guests of the Honeybee podcast to offer one nugget of wisdom for the listeners. And I'm curious to know if you are willing and able to share some additional wisdom with us today.
The first thing that comes up in my mind is, don't give up on your children by giving up on yourself.
Say more about that. That's so powerful. Say more about that, please.
I see many people, many children, teenagers, who are struggling with something that they don't know, but they are not enjoying their lives fully. And then I see their parents. Well, I know where that comes from. And then I see their parents, and I see the link between their children behavior, their children's behavior, their children's unhappiness, their children's restlessness, and always think, what a shame. Because I put myself in the shoes of their children and also their parents. I know what it means to be in a certain way. I know what it means not to know of being that way. But I also know what you can do, that you can do something to be different. And when I see those situations, I always think, wow, you see, you are giving up on yourself. And so you are giving up on your children too. But if you care, if you see that the results, I mean, if you see that your children's behavior is not what they are happy about, if you see something about your children that does not correspond to a happy child, try to understand yourself better so that you can create a constructive relationship with them. You can review your relationship with them, and that you can create a bridge between you and them. Because often I see that I hear also that parents blame their children for being this way, that way, they don't respond to my advices, etc. Ask yourself why, but not thinking of an answer that has to come from your children, but from you. Yeah, this is why I think, don't give up on your children by giving up on yourself.
You stated that so beautifully. I would think that when the parent is intentional about reawakening and doing their internal work, by them doing that, that transformation within will also affect the relationship that they have with their child. And hopefully, in a very positive way, I would think in a very positive way, and that could reestablish or reaffirm or strengthen their emotional bond. And then we would then see, right, some balance in behaviors and interaction between the parent and the child, because there would be some things that have shifted for the parent. And then that bridge has been built to connect with their child in a different way. And then we have this lovely new flow of reciprocity.
Yes, absolutely. You are right. Because children sense everything. Often they cannot find an answer to what they sense, find a meaning to what they sense. They observe, but often they do not understand what is happening, or better said, why something is happening. And if you do transform yourself, then they will sense that too. And little by little, they will change together with you. Sometimes you have, of course, to do some effort, if we want to name it that way. And this means to communicate with them, to explain them the reasons why of your behavior, of their behavior, to help them understand themselves better. So you will have to create communication channels with them, and don't be afraid to say sorry. To say sorry, I was wrong, I couldn't do it any better, because they will understand. They will struggle too, because they can be angry at you, but eventually they will understand and forgive you.
That is such beautiful wisdom, Elena. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I think I stated this in previous conversations, like I could talk to you all day because I love this
Me
very
too.
deep, rich, meaningful, transformative
Yes.
type of conversation. And I'm mindful that our listeners probably couldn't listen to us talk all day. So I am just so appreciative for you being willing to share this space with me. I wish for you nothing but wonderful, positive things. And I just truly appreciate you again for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me too. Thank you so much, Vena.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode with Elena Perella, life coach and owner and operator of Sentidu Life Coaching, based in Sardinia, Italy. To learn more about Elena, please go to her website, sentidu.com. That is spelled SENTIDU.com. honeybee.com. Her information will be in the show notes. Thank you again for tuning in to the Honeybee Podcast. Until next time, peace.